Full disclosure.
2 angles.
This is my...
All right. Full disclosure. This is my
daily Morgellons.
My daily Morgellons
ritual. Nothing, no weird
dealing with ritual.
Real physical.
Nothing, no weird cultish stuff about it. It's like a real physical thing that must be done.
My skin swells and turns weird colors.
My skin swells and turns weird colors, and eventually splits open, and my earlobes will like skin peels off and bleeds out. My eyebrows do the same thing, and I basically have a migraine 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If I don't, nobody seems to understand it. Or yeah, okay, whatever. And it's a long story to try and describe how I came to this conclusion. I suppose I should do that, but not right now because we're dealing with it at the moment. The air show seems to be ramping up again here in Port Orchard. Several low-flying, propeller-driven, diesel-powered airplanes have flown right over, and those are the worst. Although all planes tend to fuck me up for some reason. But anyway. Okay, so people say like, so what, you burn the hair off of here? What, you get a hair phobia? And no, not at all. It's not hair. Now, the hair will burn off to a certain point. But then it would be burned. This is a different than the burning hair. It has nothing to really do with the hair. The hair is just where one of the most annoying and sensations, and it's sometimes painful as well, is felt on the skin because of the nerves there, duh. So anyway, so this whatever feels like appears to be a growth of I imagine it to be a super fine weave, like stringy fungus, right? That's growing through cells. I mean, at that level, because you can't really see an individuation from a hair or whatever, except, well, you can in certain cases. And anyway, I'm just going to do my thing here, and I'll try to explain it better later. Fuck it. Okay, yeah. This is not if I was burning the hair, the hair would burn and then the smoke would stop, right? What if the smoke just never stopped? You could just do this for, an hour, and it would continuously smoke the whole time and make a strange smelling vapor in the air that clung heavily, like literally doesn't leave the area unless you open some sort of ventilation and forcibly fan air through there to make it leave. And it still has a hard time sometimes. And it will, the smell it'll dissipate completely after a while. But anyway, it seems to grow along the core, like it feels like it comes from my spine, if I was going to be straight up about it. It's as if there's some fungal fibrous growth coming from the center of my spine out through every single, every cell, down to the tiniest, cells, and to the larger ones, all the way out, growing outward. And it seems to be like drawn to electromagnetic frequencies. And the preponderance of airplanes that seem to be flying over would indicate that there's, for some reason, a lot more small planes than really needs to be. Well, large planes as well, to tell you the truth. So I shouldn't limit to just small planes, but those are the ones I notice the most. Flying over, towns. I haven't been to a town in 10 years that didn't have the same thing happening. It was all day and all night until the pandemic. They stopped all the planes for a few months, and then they slowly started to ramp up again with the jumbo jets until it was, all day, all night with jumbo jets, at least in Vancouver and Portland. And they haven't brought on the small planes all night, but they do it all day. It's like clockwork. Every morning, there go the planes. Oh, or, Fred and Barney off to work in their little diesel-powered propeller airplanes. What are you doing today, Fred? Oh, Barney, I'm going to go fly in circles over town all day. What's that? Yeah, we got the greatest jobs in the world, don't we? I'm going to do the same thing. Besides, life's a journey, not a destination. Who needs to go anywhere? Let's just fly our airplanes in circles all day, Barn. Okay, Fred. Right, whatever. So these planes start flying in circles. this is what they do. And then there's, if you've watched them long enough as I have, you'll start to notice groupings, planes that fly at certain angles and have the same spacing of the lights and stuff and the same altitude, and they're always at the same altitude pretty much, and they're always doing the same types of maneuvers in different areas. If one's flying by at quite an angle and it just seems to always be at that angle, I would pretty much have to go with its side scanning into the area. And these fly around over the residential areas in town. They're not, they're not at the freeway where they're like doing some sort of, aerial surveying or watching traffic or that sort of stuff at all. What happened to the life flight helicopter? I haven't seen that thing in forever. I guess we don't need it anymore. Everybody's doing just fine now, thanks to their vaccinations. And modern medicine is helping us live longer, healthier lives. Just look around you at the Asian people that are everywhere and the healthy, robust attitude of the American public. Makes a lot of sense. Let's never question it. Okay, anyway, the fiber grows along the core outward, and it concentrates around the neck, the medulla oblongata, the temples. That seems to be like, near all the sense organs, because it feels like it's in the ears, it's in your eyebrows. I've been doing this for a couple hours a day for probably 2 full years now. A couple hours a day, every day. Sometimes more than that. Sometimes I'll miss it. I'm just trying to average that out. It's not necessarily every day. I could skip a day, but if I skipped 3 days, my wrists would start to swell again. I've got this throbbing thing down here that it just happens. I don't know if you can see it. Yeah, you can see that. That's not just my regular pulse. It's like thump, 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 thump. Yeah, I'm just, how often this happens when I'm doing nothing. I was sleeping. It'll wake me up. All of a sudden, my heart's going at that speed. My wrists are throbbing. You can visually see it. That little pulse right there, it used to be my entire wrist and it was swole up on the back up here too. And the discoloration, little kind of splotchiness look to it. It's the white fungus seems to be the white underneath, and this other colors are it reacting with my plasma or something along that lines. Because when I first was realized that this shit's killing me, and I'm thinking 2015, 2016, and I realized doctors were not going to help me, and if they didn't know what to do, or they're full of shit, and they were just withholding it if they did, and saying it was something else. And I'm not going to go through the whole rigmarole, getting Lyme disease tests and getting fucking poked and prodded and having to take my blood when I know they're full of shit to begin with. So it was like, it's up to me. I'm going to, figure something out. I can't go into the whole story about how I figured out. Like I said, it's a long story, but suffice to say, from it, I'm just pointing out how bad it was. You can't really see it as much now because it's been so many years. Okay, so anyway, back to the point. 2 years or so, I've been doing this every day, and I haven't shaved recently, but wherever there's silver and white hairs, they will burn first. And when they burn like, they sound like a fuse sometimes. Not always. Like here lately, it's just been a vaporous, but they go and they flare up. That was the ones around my ears and stuff, and they'll probably do that. I don't know. But this is my time today. I'm up here and it's quiet, so. Oh yeah, I was gonna turn the heater off here. I'm on my sailboat, trying to keep the nudity to a minimum. This stuff that grows around my ears, you can't really see anything is there, right? It won't look like it, but you sure can feel it. I equate it to, nanofibers. If you think about it, these things are down. They're not at the pore level. It's not like the size of a hair you're going to be able to see, even with a magnifying glass. We're talking about, a few nanometers in width and in a long chain. So that would make a fiber strand. Imagine that. it would be like a string that was, imagine a string that was, 4 nanometers thick and continued on and on and on, maybe 6 nanometers thick, continued on and on and on, and just growing. That's so tiny that you couldn't see it with a microscope. I mean, you'd have to have one hell of a microscope. And then to individuate one at that level, that would be coming out of, not pores, at the pore level, that would be coming out of cells. It'd be, 1,000 of them across a hundredth of a millimeter. There could be 1,000 strands coming out of that one spot. But they're all that thin. And they're basically translucent due to the way they would form, I guess, So you wouldn't be able to see it. It would look like fuzz that was coming off of the skin, but it would be, what I would equate to what is called slime mold, which I haven't investigated deep the specifics of slime molds. Just, I'm not an expert on slime molds, other than I believe this is basically of that character. And it targets, certain areas on your body. I think that's where the particles store up and, the most. But it seems to be targeted, like it's consciously targeted. Like there's some conscious force almost guiding it, such as an AI computer maybe. You can see the tops of my shoulders, or my little V thing right here. This was a big zigzag going across my entire chest down here, and it has slowly shrunk across here. And it also had it goes up here, and it goes around my neck, around my ears, all over the back of my head, which is hard to see on my head. It's not as visible, but I can feel where it's at. And this goes down lower too, but I don't need to show you that, right? And pertaining to it, it causes, different shapes in the, where my muscles would be, where the fat would be, under my arms especially, But I've been getting it off of my shoulders here most recently, this one being the worst, and you can see the wrinkly appearance on the top there. That's an indicator of it. I have it at my knees, at my ankles, on the bottoms of my feet, on the back of my head. So when you see some fat dude with jowls on the back of his head, like right here, somebody with a fat neck, they got these rolls right here, right? I don't think necessarily having a fat neck would cause this, but this is not a natural development. This is what Morgellons is. This is the toxic buildup of the things we breathe that are inundating our bodies. I mean, a nanometer is tiny. Nanometers are so small. One single skin cells are large for cells. There's a lot of smaller cells than skin cells, I'm quite certain. A nanoparticle, say your average nanoparticle, you're 6 nanometers tall and, 3 nanometers in thickness. And you go on down to the local cell, and you're going to go hang out at the cell and visit some other nanoparticles. So, a skin cell, being a larger cell, that's like a stadium to a nanoparticle. It's like you walking into the kingdom. Wait a minute, there's no kingdom, right? You walk into, the Coliseum, wherever the fuck you are. You walk into Staples Center, a person is a nanoparticle to a skin cell in that ratio. They're tiny, and they get into every cell. And then they're conductive. They're antennas. They pick up high frequencies, and they begin to oscillate at those frequencies. They become polarized at that point. The positives and negatives of the particles will link to each other in strands, electrically. This isn't like, some far out theory in that regard, right? This is electrical 101, and that would happen. It's kind of like the magnet with when you put a magnet under steel filings, the steel filings will kind of line up in rows because of the same principle at work. Well, a microwave can electrify an antenna. That's how an antenna has a wavelength to pick up a certain frequency. And when it becomes electrified, as that wave goes through it, creating a plus at one end and a minus at the other, that has the magnetic equivalent. And the magnetics will line up then too. So then you have long chains. And these chains are stuck to your cells. And they'll link up through the cells, out the cells, along the cells, and they will grow towards their source in the same way that in a vacuum tube, an amplifier, they create extra electrons by heating the heater at the bottom, and then the electrons are freed, and then right above that in the tube will be the grid with the anode and the cathode, and in the grid is where your signal goes in, and it gets drawn with the electrical flow upward to the anode, up to the anode. And along with it comes all these extra electrons that are released from the heater, and that's what amplifies the signal. All that extra energy is put into that, and it takes the same shape as your input signal. And that's how an amplifier tube would work. So along that same principle, nanoparticle strands are being drawn towards their power source, basically, which is the microwaves from the 5 beta kappa G's from Five Guys burgers, I should say. You know, those Five Guys burgers, boy, they're delicious, aren't they? I just wish they'd have a better cheese selection. They've got like all this badass stuff you can put on your burgers, and then only like 2 kinds of cheese, and it's like a slice of cheese, like a Kraft, you know, single out of a package. You peel off the plastic on it, and that's their cheese. Good burgers though. Anyway, I'm pretty much a vegetarian anymore because I feel a little healthier at that point. But I do love my tuna fish sandwiches sometimes. Tell you that. Poor little fishies, they're so tasty. But when I do eat fish, when I do have any meat of any kind, I give a little thank you prayer to the animal that gave its life, just as an acknowledgement. Oh, got a sizzle off my eyebrow. I haven't done those in a while. Or the middle of my head, or... You know, it's strange. You can feel the heat begin to grow at a certain point. It's like it tracks right to that spot. And if nothing happens right away, it's just because you got to be more patient. It feels like it's drawing it out right now. I can feel a pull towards the flame. And eventually it'll hit the right spot and it'll sizzle. That's why it's not burning me. You know, it takes so long before it feels like it's getting hot. The boat's rocking back and forth now. So if I'm burning hair, how many times can you burn the same hair? My ears are ringing too right now. Airplane's coming. This seems to be coming out of the inside of my ear as well as from above it. Feels like the draw. And I know my temples are fairly loaded right now. Nothing like it was years ago, but I can see it. You know, I can look in the mirror and see wherever there's little ripples on the side of my head. That's where the stuff is at. I mean, that's what it is. It's making that ripple. It's very clear to see. And when you start to burn it, the candle makes noise. Or the flame does, or whatever you're using. It affects the flame as if some sort of energy is traveling from what's being burned through the plasma stream to the you know, the fuel source of the candle, and messing with the flame, and it's and all that. It clogs up lighters. If you do this with a lighter, it'll clog the lighter eventually. Most lighters. It's great for the complexion. And get rid of that unsightly body hair. It's mostly concentrated though. Its biggest concentration is the back of the neck. It really is. It's everywhere, and it's in every cell, but it concentrates in your joints, hardcore, arthritis, right? And it in areas where there's not muscle or fat, like your temples inside of your head. When you look on that muscular, the muscle chart, there'll be areas between the major muscles that are just kind of that lax area. That's where it really absorbs in at, and you get the infected plasma liquid seems to come from, and that's what it's like. It's like the plasma under your skin has become thick, and there's more of it, and it swells up, and it's infected, but not enough that your skin falls off, just enough to keep you feeling ill health all the time. This is how I felt at first, and then I noticed that if I get a cut or a scratch of any kind, it just never heal. And it seemed like it was infected immediately. It was like my skin would start turning pink right there, real pink, and it just would not heal. It would leave a scar from a scratch. I'm like, what the fuck, And it just got worse and worse and worse and worse. This seems to get that stuff. Maybe it's the fiber growing like its little tentacles and that's about as much as it can do. But it heats it, and it feels like it's drawing it out. The swelling goes down, the ringing in my ears goes down, and all over my sense of everything gets better in ways that you would not think to associate with something like this, but it really does. Just the physical sensations of pain and itching and ringing ears and irritation, having that relieved for a minute does wonders for your outlook and personality and your feelings and your mood and all that shit. Believe it or not, how you feel affects how you feel. Anyway, okay, I'm done now. I'm just gonna concentrate on getting the back of my head, because that's the area that's, I keep saying, the back of the neck, back of the head's the worst, and for this stuff, and I can feel it there right now. I mean, I feel a pain. It goes from my spine down my hip, but it runs all the way up, and it seems to culminate right here in the back left side of my head, and my temple, then whatever, medulla oblongata, the occipital lobe area. Yeah. And once it lets up the smoke, it relaxes the stress of, it feels like a pulled muscle. My hip will stop going out when I'm trying to do stuff, or my knee or whatever, and because it spreads. It's like this fiber weaves everywhere through your body, and fingertip to your spine and everywhere else, and it contracts and it draws and it causes tension and stress, and it's electrically conductive, and there's microwaves everywhere, so it's like on a cellular level, it's electrocuting me, is what it seems like. I used to have quite the deal with feeling like I was getting shocked too, like all the time. It felt like I was getting zapped continuously when it was really bad years ago. That still happens sometimes, but it's not as intense. That's the reason I can even function now. It's like it was non-functional 5 years ago. I can't stress that enough. So if anybody thinks I sound like a crazy person who's just imagining shit, they can go and eat a bowl of dick, as far as I'm concerned. It means they don't know what they're talking about, and they're probably just indoctrinated, brainwashed people. Oh, go to the doctor, he's going to help you. You've got 10 different disorders, not one thing that's affecting everything. Yeah, sure, I got 10 different disorders. One's with my nails, and there's one's with my skin, and then there's one that's unrelated, but it's with my, my ears, and then there's another one that's unrelated, it has to do with my eyesight, and then there's another one that's unrelated to anything of the other ones, but it has to do with, blah, 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 down the line. Yeah, whatever. Doctors make a living out of pretending that whatever part of your body or type of, problem you may be having is unrelated from other problems. It seems. Well, we'll just let everybody believe that each individuated type of symptom they have is a different disorder, and we'll give it a name, and we'll make a prescription for it, and we'll pretend that every little thing that could go wrong with a person is some part of some different thing. And so there's a zillion things out there trying to attack you, right? I'm saying that it's one thing, and I'm not the only one. Hulda Clark, look up Huldaclark, maybe an E on the end, I'm not sure. She left the country because they were going to kill her, and then she wrote books, the Cure for All Disease, I believe it was called. They don't like you to say cure because they don't want you to know there's cures. And I don't even know if there is a cure. This obviously isn't a cure, but it's a treatment, and it saved my life, so I'm sharing it. And there's a few other things that are just as crazy seeming as this, but this is the least crazy of the ones, so I'm going to share this one. I've already mentioned the other things. If you watch my other videos, you probably find it has to do with heat as well. High heat takes heat. As what's going to live in my skin? What kind of fungus? Now this is a good treatment, and so is my other method with the heat, because whether this is a biological, I think the plane's almost here. Whether this is biological or whether it's electromechanical, I would say. If it's a toxic buildup of metals, and I'm dealing with the metal aspect of it, being a metal, or whether it's a organic living, fungus, and its fibers are growing, it really doesn't matter, because this method will affect them both. It's like the difference between a plant and a machine. See, a fungus is growing. You don't want the fungus there, but you can use a flamethrower on the fungus, and it will kill it. And say you got a robot, coming up on you, right? You got a clone army coming at you. If you've got enough flamethrower power, if you could throw a cutting torch out, a flame from a cutting torch, you can take out biology or mechanisms, is what I'm saying. If that makes any sense. You don't have to have a antibiotic that only affects a biological thing. Or, and how do you affect something that's a metal, robot nerves growing inside of you? This is what I would call the fibers. Long strands of nanoparticles that are electrified and then connected end, growing into conductive, wavelength specific paths out from your core of your spinal fluid on out, every bit of you, every bit, and it all interweaves it into a weave of some sort, and that makes you a resonant cavity for its particular crystalline structure, which would be the metals that are making up the particles, which are a mixture of barium, strontium, and aluminum, because aluminum's so good for you. Now, we haven't linked aluminum to any disorders or anything that are epidemic right now. That's a conspiracy theory that, doctors and scientists have discovered that years ago. A lot of people like to say that's true, but if you look at for the research, research is there, but clearly it must have been fake, because we know it's not true nowadays, you see. Or those doctors back then, they just didn't know what they were talking about when they discovered that Alzheimer's, autism, and now Asperger's is completely and totally linked to absorption of nanoparticles of aluminum. We just had no idea. And these guys were wrong, you see. So that's why the literature looks as if there's evidence that suggests that, but it's actually incorrect, and we need to stand and as soon as Google owns all of the rights to all of the world's history, we'll just erase those parts from history, because it's incorrect, you see. And so aluminum's actually really good for you. Along with fluoride, you need a certain USRDA amount, actually. Well, the USRDA apparently has determined that our USRDA recommended daily allowance of aluminum oxide is by breathing it can only be reached by breathing aluminum oxide gas all day and all night, every day and every night for our entire lives. And then we'll get enough of that wholesome, good aluminum oxide that we need in order to be strong and healthy and grow up and have happy lives. It makes a lot of sense. Hooray for America. Fight them over there. This is how I entertain myself. So much fun. the alternative is to be crippled and have a continuous headache or just kill myself, right? So this is my attempt to avoid killing myself. Because it doesn't really seem like, something I want to do, but, when you become completely non-functional, you're being tortured 24 hours a day and by these conditions, and they just don't ever stop, and you go to seek help, and your doctors are like, hey, you can see them. You can see it on their face, on some of them. Some of them seem to care. Some of them seem like, this sucker don't know and shit. Oh, gee whiz, give us your blood and we'll see what we can do. I went to the doctor one time and I described this stuff without including the airplane connection, but I described all the symptoms I'm dealing with that could be considered medical. And I was there for an abscessed tooth, and so I was trying to get some antibiotics for that because it was getting bad. And while I was talking to the doctor, he checked me over. He was an older gentleman too, and it was kind of towards evening when I went to the hospital. And anyway, I could tell he recognized what I was talking about. He would affirm the types of symptoms that I was describing, and basically after a long time, his response to this quite specific and deep list of symptoms and things was I don't know. It was like gee, and he gave me my prescription for the antibiotics for the tooth thing. And I could just tell he knew exactly what I was talking about on every one of the symptoms. He could follow it, and he just couldn't say anything about it apparently, or didn't want to. And I could see it in his eyes that he knew there was more to what I was dealing with than just a tooth issue and whatever, and I was like, whatever. Another time I went to the doctor, they sent me to the I can't remember the name of it. It's where the state will send you, it's like CMAR. I think it was CMAR. They sent me to CMAR, and the doctor, I get checked in, and the doctor comes in, and finally, after about 10 minutes, and he's like this short, fat guy. Like, you don't see too many fat doctors, but this guy's easily, he's 50 pounds overweight. Not tremendously fat, but overweight. And he's sitting in his chair, and sits down in the chair, and, and kind of, after he, they just looked me over and took my pulse and, listened to my heart and looked at my throat and all that stuff, right? So, and he says, when I'm describing my symptoms, he's like, it's like he's kind of half listening, and he made the comment of something like, oh, you're about 12% body fat. And I was, and it probably was about that time, which is not unhealthy, and it's not, it's fairly low. I don't know, it was like he was jealous or something, because he's a little fat dude, and I fucking, Roger, look at the gun show. Yeah, no, anyway. Hey, it's starting to sizzle. But I was trying to describe a serious medical matter, and he's just kind of like blowing it off, like, you don't look like there's nothing wrong with you. You're 12% body fat or something. You look just fine to me. This is before you could see the lines that are zigzagged around me. They were there. You could see them if you looked in the light, but I wasn't going to try to explain to a doctor, well, here, come out in the sunshine, and when the sun is setting and you see the angle of the sunlight coming off of your skin, you can make out these lines. See that dry skin patch? It looked like a dry skin line that turned into the red line that zigzags all around me and up around the back of my head, which is the indicator of where the stuff's growing at. So none of this is, just willy-nilly random shit. I've followed its progression closely and I'm documenting it now, so, and how I've had to deal with it, just for record. There could be somebody out there who could stumble upon this and be like, I'm dealing with all that same shit. You mean if I lean over a candle for a fucking hour or two a day, it'll help? I don't know. It helps me, though. That's all I can say. I don't want to do this. It's not like this is my joy. I'd rather be doing something normal. This stuff costs you everything. Morgellons is fucked off. You can't hang out with your friends. You can't hang out with your family. You can't hang out with anybody, really. You can't do any of the normal types of things that people who aren't at this stage yet are dealing with. But this is what's going to happen to basically everyone. The only difference is most people will go to their doctor as each different type of symptom sets in, from the toxic buildup and the fungal growth and the fibrous thing and the 5G interactions. That stuff will all begin to happen slowly. With slowly, I'm talking like, over the course of maybe, you'll think you're okay when you're a kid. You'll start to have problems most likely as a teenager, but they'll be fairly minor. You'll be able to muddle through your 20s with these problems getting slightly more. And then sometime in your 30s, they'll start to get really bad and you'll start having trouble functioning. And by your 40s, you're going to be on pills and dealing with all kinds of things. And all your time is going to be spent dealing with your ailments. That is what this stuff will do to the nation, the population, our children, our grandchildren. And that's the type of lives they're going to lead. Short, miserable lives of servitude. That's what our children have to look forward to, thanks to the cults of the world and their plan for humanity. And our inability to come together as people and recognize what's being done. When they say culling of the population, they weren't kidding. What do you want to do? March down and declare that you're going to war with the people? Look out, people, we're going to get rid of you useless eaters now, and here comes your army of your own people. Like they're going to send, which is what they've been doing. They've been taking the kids from one side of the world and sending them to kill people on the other side of the world, and vice versa, as much as they can. Duh. Look at history. Some of the things happened, but the reasons for why they happened and what was going on is never given to us. You have to figure that out for yourself. People who believe what they're told, or they get what they deserve, I guess, right? And even if you don't, you still get what they got planned for you. The most intense concentration of this shit that's hardest to get to come off is at the crown of my head. It follows like Hindu tradition. They're like it's chakras. It's the neck. It's under the arms. It's the solar plexus, along the spine. This stuff seems like a weapon that attacks your glands and your energy points, and it lends a lot of credence to the Hindus' physical human, makeup. Like what would you call that? Like their conception of the different bodies, where you have the chakra points and what those energies connect to. I'm trying to get my temples right now. This is what it means to purify the temple. I'm quite certain now, because this isn't completely new. I think what this is the nanoparticle, metal microwave aspect of it is just the most recent addition. I think maybe this is some sort of this Morgellons, the fungus aspect of it. I think that this is my take on it, based on I'm not going to try and support everything I say right now. But it's that the rulers of humanity didn't want to deal with people who lived several hundred years. Because if you lived several hundred years in good health, and you would form deep, long connections, you would know your family to an extended level, right? And there would be lots of you. And they'd be well coordinated if you lived in health for hundreds of years and could coordinate, communicate, and stuff. I mean, that would create a much better human network than we have today. And the people, the controllers, were always still the controllers. They were the controllers then, too. Or maybe they were just usurpers. But they developed, or they found something that existed in people already that they could that they could, that they could pharmakia upon. Farm him. We're gonna farm them. So either they created this fungus and they introduced it into the human population, or maybe they're introducing it at birth still. Maybe that's why, there's these doctors associations so that they can, fuck everybody up right out the gate. Or the dentists are doing it nowadays. Yeah, who knows? They're either given to you or they're taking advantage of something that already exists. Let me go back to the old story again, though. The old story was, okay, so they didn't want to deal with people living hundreds and hundreds of years and having good connections, and, how do you keep control of it at a certain point? It's too big of a job. You can't. But, well, they didn't stop living so long. It's not that they wanted us all dead. They just didn't want us living as long as we were, creating the type of, infrastructure and networks with other people and having the power that would give you to live that long and, be able to be in good health so that you could communicate and coordinate effectively. Kind of a Tower of Babel type of situation. And so they introduce the fungus. The fungus grows with the person through the course of their life. The fungus becomes so bad that it causes all kinds of health problems and disorders and eventually results in the person's death at a certain time that can be predicted. Because the fungus grows at a certain rate, the person grows and grows. We know the rate the person grows. We know the rate the fungus grows. The fungus grows to the point that it's overtaking the person in 100 years. And the person won't really know anything's wrong until at least 50 of those years. And then we'll just tell them that, well, here's what's wrong and here's what's wrong. And we'll tell everybody that this is perfectly normal. This is a natural development because this is what it means, because God makes shit and doesn't know what he's doing. So, right? So we'll start a medical establishment since we're in charge of the people already. And our medical establishment will just legitimize everything that they're dealing with. And that was fine for a while, but then the 100-year lifespans got to be a bit too long for them still. And they're like, well, we're trying to reduce the population now that the humans have built all the infrastructure that we want for them. Let's ratchet it up a notch. How do we do that? They're living too long still. They're still doing too much. Well, we could, spray them with fertilizer that the fungus likes so that it grows much faster and much stronger. And then, hey, why not add some microwaves to that so we can read their minds and affect their, physiology all at the same time? Oh, we'll have fun with this one. All right. Woo, make it so. Number one, make it so. And that brings you to where we are today. Very quickly. I should make a more of a deal on that about the fungus and how it's intentionally given to the human population in order to be a governor on how coordinated they can become based upon their health, because you can't coordinate, you can't go out and do things, you can't invent stuff, you can't, do shit when your health is so fucking bad you can't do anything. I mean, that's just a given. You can't do anything, you can't do anything. And this renders you to that state slowly, though, not all at once, and in multiples of ways. So what better way than Dr. So-and-so to just, you have a problem, you go see him, oh yeah, you've got COPD, oh, you've got this, you've got that, you've got the other thing. And really, you've got the fungus slowly taking you over, but he ain't gonna say that, and most likely he doesn't even fucking know. Doctors are dumbasses. And the ones that are in the know, they're not probably the ones you're gonna see. They're in charge of the whole administration or something. I'm not going to delve into the politics of that shit. You figure that out. I'm just showing you what is. This is what is. Am I burning my hair off still? Boy, I sure got a lot of hair, don't I? If I quit talking, you'd probably hear the candle sizzle. This gets rid of the headache too. My head will be throbbing, the headache. Till I can't even do function, and I won't want to go waste my time, whatever. I don't want to spend time doing this, and I know that this is what will get rid of the headache because of how I've come to know this shit. is it's like a layer burns off and it's immediately replaced, and you can literally feel it drying. It's been bad around the sides of my neck lately, really, like along the jugular vein and stuff, kind of line. So yeah, what's coming off is like what's under my skin. The swelling comes out and it evaporates into the air, into this vapor from the heat. It is a preponderance of it around the eyes or in eye sockets, in my ear, under earlobes, around the top of the ear, really bad, usually. I mean, years ago, this is where, when I said my wrists were swollen and, where the throbbing was and stuff, that same phenomenon is at every joint, really. It's over each one of my toe knuckles, over my ankles, it's over my knees, over my hips, every vertebrae. It was also over the corners of my eyes, above my ears, and the top of my head. Same thing, basically. Stick me in between the eyes. Left eyebrow. In my left ear. Cheek. I hear a jet plane going over. Thanks a lot, Uncle Sam. You're the best. Okay, I gotta take a break. I'll probably have to get another hour or two. Really, I should get my arms too. My fingers are starting to turn white a little bit, as the microwaves will cut off the circulation. Probably think by tensing up that fiber, stops circulation, my fingers turn white, they're completely useless, it hurts like hell, and I can't do anything with my hands. I'm a mechanic, and I like to, try and play music and shit. Oh yeah, good luck with all that, right? When I talk about my forearms and wrists, they used to be swollen. I've got them on video. You can go back if my YouTube's there. If they're still there, they're still there. This fiber, it looks like hairs, and it wraps around the hairs, so the hairs you have will resemble the white silver appearance. The white hair epidemic, the white silver hair epidemic that's going on. It also creates this banding. You can see in the shadows, this banding, circular banding, when it's like it contracts. That's why I say, it cuts off the circulation. I can feel my fingers getting the circulation starting to cut off of them slowly right now. But again, it's fiber in it. The fibers contract until you have problems. That's the, if a natural fungus could mess you up and it gives you a certain lifespan. But if you could electrify that fungus and make it act like a nerve to stimulate a muscle, or if you could, that fiber can expand and contract and it's all linked together, then you've basically got a muscle. You've got an artificial muscle overlaying a person. And so, you want to use directed energy weapons on people, you have to prepare the person first, because people are not conductive. We're not normally electrically conductive to a high degree. Basically, an insulator in many regards, semiconductor at best. But once every cell in your body is filled with the metal, you're then very conductive. And it's a lot easier to use electromagnetic frequency weapons on people. In fact, they're non-effective until you have the person properly conductive. If you were not conductive, these weapons wouldn't work. This is prepping everybody so that directed energy weapons can be used on them effectively. And everybody just accepts it. You know, nobody's thought it out that far, apparently. I mean, that was my first thought I came to with chemtrails. Kimberly T. Rails, excuse me. Chemtrails don't exist. Contrails, with persistent heavy contrails. Thanks, Neil and the Grass Tyson. My first thought was directed energy weapons. I thought, why would they want our bodies filled with nanoparticles of metal? Why? And I thought, lightning gun. You know, electricity ain't gonna do much to a person who's like a person's supposed to be. But once you're all filled with metals, well, then you ping on a radar, you know. And electricity can be, you know, directed and travel through you and disrupt your neurons and mess with your nervous system and whatever. It burn you alive if you put enough power to it. Okay. Anyway. Thanks for watching. I hope I didn't inadvertently expose any private areas in this video. But I felt it needed to be made, and I got 2 versions here. I'm going to try and split screen it on my video software, and hopefully I can figure that out.
5130.